All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're unpacking a deeply historical, pivotal narrative, the Masterclass of Karbala. Now, there's this really common misconception out there. When a lot of people hear about the events of Karbala, they instantly think of it as just this tragic story of helplessness, a tale of victims to be mourned. But the source material we're looking at today completely flips that script. We're going to see how this event is actually a masterclass in ultimate courage, and how really unpacking it can change our entire understanding of what it means to stand up to power.
3, 2, 1!
So, according to the sources, portraying Karbala merely as a time of weeping just entirely misses the mark. It completely reframes this historical tragedy as a calculated, highly tactical, and just immense display of valor against tyranny. We aren't looking at a group of people who are simply cornered and defeated here. Not at all. We are looking at a deliberate, principled stand made by fearless individuals who knew exactly what the ultimate cost was going to be.
3, 2, 1!
So here is our roadmap for the Explainer. We're going to cover 1. The political climate, 2. Refusing tyranny, 3. Bravery over fear, 4. Ultimate sacrifices, 5. Hussein's final stand, and finally 6. The enduring legacy. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the political climate, a shift in power.
3, 2, 1!
Tracing this political escalation reveals exactly how this whole thing unfolded. Because, as the source notes, major historical conflicts like this, they don't just happen overnight in a vacuum. Years prior, a peace treaty had actually been established by Imam Hussain. But if we skip ahead to the year 60 AH, the current ruler, Muawiyah, passes away. Now, according to the historical account, before he passed, Muawiyah advised that his successor, Yazid, should seek counsel from 3 specific prominent figures, and that included Imam Hussain. But Yazid bypassed this entirely. Instead of following that traditional counsel, he sent out these secret letters to the governor of Medina, demanding forced allegiance from Imam Hussain before he even publicly announced his own rule. It was this really rapid, highly calculated political squeeze.
3, 2, 1!
Entered around this concept called bay'ah, which is basically an oath of absolute allegiance and unconditional obedience. You see, Yazid wasn't just asking for a casual vote of confidence or a political endorsement here. He was demanding a religious and political mandate to completely legitimize his authority. And the source emphasizes that for Imam Hussain, providing this oath to someone he saw as unfit would mean literally endorsing corruption. He simply could not in good conscience do that. Which brings us to Section 2, refusing tyranny.
3, 2, 1!
First draws a really stark contrast between these two figures. On one side, you have Yazid's documented actions, which involved violating religious limits, very public sins, and just deep-rooted corruption. On the flip side, Imam Hussein's motivations were entirely about protecting the integrity of the faith and seeking the pleasure of God. The Explainer source notes that Imam Hussain made it explicitly clear he would rather face death than legitimize a corrupt ruler. So it's important to get that it wasn't some political power grab on Hussein's part. It was a deeply moral line drawn in the sand. But as you can probably guess, drawing that line came with some brutal, immediate consequences. Just look at this timeline of escalating hardships. On the 1st of Muharram, Hussein's caravan is intercepted. By the 7th of Muharram, the opposing army uses this incredibly ruthless tactic. They completely cut off the water supply to Hussein's camp. And remember, they're in the middle of a burning desert. Then on the 9th, a final ultimatum is delivered. Basically, submit to Yazid or face war. The source highlights this to show how the opposing army tried to literally force a surrender by isolating and just physically exhausting Hussein's family.
Moving right along to Section 3, companions, bravery over fear. Despite those brutal conditions we just talked about, we see an absolute triumph of bravery over fear among Imam Hussein's companions. And this completely shatters any narrative of victimhood. I want you to picture this: 72 individuals standing against an army of 22,000. That is just a massive, impossible gap in numbers. To stand firm when you are outnumbered to that crazy degree requires sheer, unimaginable tactical bravery and just this profound strength of conviction. And you can actually see the sheer moral weight of Hussein's stand when a commander from the opposing army, a man named Hur bin Yazid, defects. Our source details how Hur's conscience basically awakened. He walked away from his worldly power, his high rank in a 22,000-strong army, to go join Hussein's tiny, tiny camp of 72. He actually became the first martyr for Imam Hussain, which marked a massive moral victory before the major physical battle even began. And this immense courage, It definitely extended to the younger companions too. Take Qasim, the 16-year-old nephew of Imam Hussain. He wanted to fight, but Hussein actually initially refused to let him, out of love for his late brother Imam Hasan. But then Qasim revealed this hidden taweez, an amulet that was given to him by his late father, and inside was this written instruction: if a difficult time ever comes upon my brother Hussein, make sure you are at the very front. Seeing that, Imam Hussein finally granted him permission. The sources really make a point here to tear down the idea that these youths were just helpless victims standing by. 16-year-old Qasim literally rode right into battle, and despite suffering from 3 days of extreme, intense thirst, he fought fearlessly. He actually defeated 19 adversaries before he finally fell. These weren't victims, they were bold, highly capable warriors. We also see the incredibly profound sacrifice of Imam Hussein's own son, Ali Akbar. The historical accounts emphasize that Ali Akbar bore an exact physical resemblance to the Prophet. People literally used to look at Ali Akbar when they missed seeing the Prophet. So offering up a son who mirrored the Prophet so closely, that was an act of intense grief and unparalleled sacrifice for Imam Hussein. Yet, Ali Akbar fought bravely on the front lines until he too was martyred.
Which leads us into Section 4, Abbas and the Ultimate Sacrifices.
Just to ground us in the reality of this situation, by this stage in the battle, the camp, which, remember, included women and very young children, had survived 3 full, agonizing days in the scorching desert heat without a single drop of water. The physical suffering was just completely unimaginable. Driven by the cries of those thirsty children, Hazrat Abbas, Imam Hussein's brother, undertakes his final, incredibly daring mission. First, he rides out completely alone toward the river. Second, against literally all odds, he reaches the water. But out of sheer loyalty, he refuses to drink even a single drop himself while Hussein and the children remain thirsty. Third, on his way back with the filled water skin, he's ambushed, losing both of his arms to enemy strikes. And finally, tragically, the water skin itself is pierced by an arrow and he is martyred. It is a really stunning display of utter selflessness. And honestly, the absolute ruthlessness of the opposing army hit its absolute peak with the martyrdom of Ali Asghar. The source recounts this incredibly harrowing moment when Imam Hussein brought his 6-month-old infant out to the battlefield, asking for nothing but water for the child. But instead of water, the opposing army fired an arrow, striking the infant right there in Hussein's arms. It really just underscores the unyielding brutality that they were up against.
That brings us to Section 5, Hussein's Final Stand.
So at this point, after all his companions and family members had fallen, Hussein was left completely alone. But the source describes his final moments with incredible energy. Hussein didn't just surrender, okay? He donned the Prophet's turban, he wielded the legendary sword of his father Ali, and he fought off the multitude single-handedly with unparalleled valor. The enemy forces were reportedly terrified to even approach him. But eventually, covered in wounds, and with the time for prayer arriving, he stepped down from his horse. Right there on the burning sand, he performed his prayers, ultimately submitting to his fate in a state of absolute peace and devotion to God.
Finally, we reach Section 6, Bibi Zainab's Enduring Legacy.
So the physical battle had ended, right? But the narrative war had literally just begun. Standing as a captive in the very court of the ruler Yazid, Imam Hussein's sister, Bibi Zainab, delivered this powerful, entirely fearless speech. She looked at him and said, "Wait a few days, no one will even cast a curse upon you, but my brother's name will be mentioned from pulpits until the day of judgment." Her strength in that moment basically ensured that the true story of Karbala survived the tyrant's attempt to erase it.
And history proved her exactly right. The source notes that within just 3 years, Yazid's rule completely collapsed in disgrace. Meanwhile, the legacy of Imam Hussein's stand for truth and justice, that remains immortal. Imam Hussein might have lost his life on the battlefield that day, but he unequivocally won the moral and historical victory. So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all this source material? It's not just historical trivia, you guys. It's a literal masterclass for us today. In our own lives, when we see corruption or when we're faced with really tough decisions, what do? You have to ask yourself, will you live as a prisoner of your conscience, compromising your values, or will you find the courage to stand up for the truth, no matter the odds? It's a pretty profound question to leave you with.